Hey everybody, it's Rob from Rewind Video. The store is closed this week for our yearly summer vacation so that the crew can get some beach time and we can catch up on some much needed renovations. So while the staff recommendation shelf gets a new coat of paint, we're going to reach back into the archives to share some of our favorite recommendations from 2022. We hope you enjoy this episode, so let's get to it. The first movie I'm choosing to throw on the shelf here is I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Oh.
It's a 1997 movie directed by Jim Gillespie, written by Kevin Williamson, who is, of course, famous for Scream. This movie stars Jennifer Love Hewitt, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Ryan Philippe, Freddie Prinze Jr., also John Galecki, who is in Big Bang Theory, and Bridget Wilson, who actually had a pretty good little run of a career there in the 90s. She was in Last Action Hero and Billy Madison and the original Mortal Kombat movie. Her character is awful in this movie. She plays the older sister of Sarah Michelle Gellar, and she has zero redeeming qualities. She's a complete bitch to her sister, and I was waiting for that moment where they were going to, redeem her a little bit and make her likable before they killed her off. It never happened.
Doesn't happen.
In fact, she almost gets her sister killed, kind of on purpose. But anyway, weird character. I'm going to read the back of the box to you. As they celebrate their high school graduation, 4 friends are involved in a hit-and-run accident when their car hits and apparently kills a pedestrian on an isolated roadway. They dispose of the body and vow to keep the incident a secret. A year later, somebody starts sending them letters bearing the warning, "I know what you did last summer." So these 4 friends, they're out drinking and they run over somebody in the street.
We've all done it.
All done it.
Yeah.
The guy who was driving was not drunk. Somebody else in the car was drunk. So it's like they make just a series of terrible decisions. It was actually loosely based on a 1973 young adult novel by the same name. A lot of the plot details are changed. The characters don't get killed off. And the author of the book later said that she was appalled that it was turned into a slasher movie. So it's not totally similar from the to the book. But they took the concept, turned it into a horror movie. Now, where Scream is kind of a deconstruction of the 80s slasher, this is more of a riff on the 80s slasher. It's very straightforward, tonally, visually, stylistically, thematically. They're trying to be the 80s slasher movie with a 90s flavor to it.
Now, if I remember from the first time I saw this, which was shortly after it was released, I think I saw it on video, and I remember thinking, this seems to be pitching itself as maybe a supernatural story, but decidedly not.
It is definitely not.
No.
I don't remember the marketing, but I don't get the impression that from the movie that there was ever that angle. One of the reasons I chose this movie is because it perfectly captures this moment in time, the late 90s. Kevin Williamson, he was like the hottest shit in Hollywood. So then you have all these actors who are, at the time, they were all the next hot thing, right?
Yes.
Sarah Michelle Gellar, I think, was about to star in Buffy. Jennifer Love Hewitt was on that other TV show, which I can't remember the name of. But she was trying to break into film. Ryan Philippe, all these guys, they were going to be the next hot thing. They mostly are not around anymore. They all kind of just disappeared and flamed out as actors. But at 1997, this was quite a collection of talent right here.
Yes.
It also kind of reminds me of how the 90s was the last generation raised by parents who could just not be involved in their kids' lives. Right. There's no parent presence in this movie. And it made perfect sense back then. It was well, why would your parents be asking you what you're doing or where you're going or what, Nowadays, that's almost unthinkable. But in the 90s, it was really the last generation where we could get away with that. We're our parents are not paying attention to us right now.
Yeah, and it feels like that's kind of a theme in horror movies from late 80s through the 2000s.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it was even kind of something we talked about with Wayne's World.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
There's just no parental presence. And
Right.
as a kid who grew up in the 90s, I can tell you that is accurate.
Yeah.
You see Little League baseball games and stuff that have like dozens of parents in the crowd. And when we were kids, if your parents showed up for a sporting event, they were the weirdos.
Right.
It was almost uncomfortable. They were the ones yelling at the coach and stuff.
Yeah. And you were going to hear about it.
Yes.
As a Little
But
League
nowadays, parents show up for stuff.
Yeah.
Totally weird. This movie has a pretty gruesome first kill. Somebody gets, I believe, jammed in the face with a big fish hook. That was actually added later to increase the gore because they decided that it wasn't bloody enough. And I actually have to kind of agree. There's not a lot of violence in this movie. It's all off screen, very little blood. Someone else had the same thought, and they're like, well, let's take a big giant fish hook and shove it through somebody's skull, so it's a great first kill.
PG-13?
I don't believe so, but you know what? Maybe. I think it might be.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you can get away with as far as stabbing people in the skull when it comes to PG-13. Apparently a good amount.
Yeah.
But the main reason, of course, that I chose this movie is because a parade, or possibly two parades, factor into the conclusion of this movie. The whole final kill spree is framed by a parade, or possibly two parades. They don't make it obvious. So what happens is there's a killer at this parade in which Sarah Michelle Gellar is on a float going to the beauty pageant where she's going to hand over her crowd. And while she's on the float, she notices the killer is in the crowd or on a building or something watching the parade. So maybe he's just a fan of parades, which
Parade enthusiast, yeah.
most of the people in this town probably are.
Right.
But then a few deaths and the beauty pageant later, assuming this is hours later, Sarah Michelle Gellar is in an alleyway after there's some shenanigans with her getting her sister killed, and she's with a cop, and the cop gets killed. But anyway, she ends up in an alleyway, and she's getting murdered just off the main drag where there is still a parade happening and a marching band, and she gets murdered feet away from this marching band parading down the road. Which leads me to believe that this town either has two parades on the 4th of July, a daytime parade and a nighttime parade, right. Or possibly this parade just circles the town for 2, 3, 4 hours on the 4th of July.
I'm not mad at that.
Yeah. So either way, this is a major parade. It's very well attended.
So do you think that as they're writing the movie, they're thinking, let's have a kill during the parade because people are gonna not expect that something bad is gonna happen during something as joyful as a parade.
Yeah.
Is that the idea?
I've got to think that was the thinking.
Yeah.
Because they were like, well, this scene takes place a few hours later, and the parade's already happened. What should we do? And they're like, fuck it, it's got to be during the parade. we got to just do it. If we can explain it away by having two parades or whatever, or it's a 4-hour parade, but that's really just we need it during a parade.
Now, my memory of the parade is a little bit foggy from I know what you did last summer. Can you describe some of the festivities associated with the parade? There's marching band, yes. Are there floats? Are there balloons?
There's a float in the first part of the parade for sure, because that's what Sarah Michelle Gellar is riding on.
That's right.
And then the second part or second parade, you really only see it from the alley's perspective, so you just see the marching band marching down the road.
I gotcha. Okay.
But it's a huge crowd, and people were screaming and yelling. That's why no one can hear the screams, not just because of the band, but
right.
because this is a rowdy parade crowd. This town loves this parade. They seem pretty excited about the afternoon parade as well. So
gotcha.
This is just a parade town.
Mm-hmm.
And because the parade factors in so critically in the end of this movie, if you're looking for a parade movie, you have to check out I Know What You Did Last Summer, and that's why I'm putting it on the recommendation shelf this week.
I love it. I always in the mood for a horror movie, and it's not often that you get a horror movie with a parade. So
no, not often enough.
Right. I like this pick. I did not see this coming. It was not on my radar when I was looking at parade movies, so I'm thrilled that you picked it. I'm going to follow it up with a movie that is not nearly as good as Arachnophobia, but perhaps at least also entertaining.
Well, yeah.
We're going to go to 1997. We're going to stay at the front of the alphabet. Anaconda.
Ooh.
Yeah. Back of the box for this one reads, a National Geographic film crew is taken hostage by an insane hunter who forces them along on his quest to capture the world's largest and deadliest snake. This one's got a tagline, and I mention it because I have a question about it. The tagline is, when you can't breathe, you can't swim.
What?
You're right. Right. So a tagline is somewhat divorced from the central plot of the movie.
There's not a lot of swimming in this movie.
And is it even true? I feel like when I can't breathe and I'm underwater,
yeah,
I'm at least trying to swim.
I guess it depends on what you mean by can't breathe. Because if you're holding your breath, you can easily swim. But if you haven't breathed in a while and you're dying, then if you're dead, yeah, you can't swim. So I don't know.
The climax of this movie also takes place on land. So so I'm not, I don't know. I feel like they phoned the tagline in a little bit.
Yeah, they needed some tag work.
Yeah. So this is a B movie in every sense of the term, but it's got some A-list stars.
Yes.
This is a film that's directed by a guy named Luis Loza. Luis has only directed 11 movies, most of them between 87 and 97. He took an 8-year break after Anaconda before coming back to direct his last movie, which is called Feast of the Goat.
Ooh.
Perhaps another man versus animal.
It sounds like maybe. Was John Voight the reason he took an 8-year break?
It's a valid question. The back of the box really sums this movie up. There's not a lot else to get into.
Does it just say snake?
I mean, we're following this documentary film crew who's in the Amazon rainforest. They're looking for an elusive tribe of people who apparently live down there. And then their expedition is kind of hijacked by John Voight's character, who is indeed an insane snake hunter who's hunting down a giant legendary green anaconda. So we're going to talk in a moment about
yes.
John Voight's role in this movie.
I have some opinions.
But before we get to it, I do want to just call out the cast, because the cast is pretty surprising. You got John Voight, who's our main human villain. Jennifer Lopez is in this. Owen Wilson is in this.
This is like peak J-Lo, right? Or like peak early J-Lo. Back when this is like she was a star, I think. Or is this like one of her first movies?
I have to look. It's if she's not already a star, the star is rising fast. Close, close. Out of Sight is right around the corner, I think.
Owen Wilson's a rising star at this point.
Yeah. Ice Cube is kind of coming out of his movie career and getting into acting.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who are on the up and up. Eric Stoltz has not been doing anything, but nevertheless, he's in this movie.
I mean, it's not too many years after Pulp Fiction, for instance.
Yeah.
So he's around. He's kicking around. Yeah.
You even have Danny Trejo in this movie as the first victim of the anaconda. So I don't even really think he has a line other than saying like ah. All right. So as I said, this is a pretty bad movie in most senses of the term, but I think it's pretty fun as a result. John Voight's character, downright bizarre.
It is completely fucking unhinged. This performance is insane.
You could even say, I mean, I feel like he gets this script and maybe gets the job, and he's like, I'm going to channel Brando from Apocalypse Now and just go total Colonel Kurtz on.
I mean, I don't know what his motivations were. I don't know what his story is.
Right.
He's like Portuguese, Paraguayan? Like he might as well be from a different fucking planet. Like,
right.
I have no idea where, like, you have no idea where he's going with things.
So just for context, so we can talk about it. You're introduced to Jon Voight's character because the boat with the documentary crew is heading down the river, and they see a shipwrecked boat during a storm, and Jon Voight is like hanging from a tree, and he's like, "I need help. Get me on your boat." And from there, they take him on, and from there he begins to take over. He wants to hunt this snake. He's an expert on snakes. He gets the crew out of some jams, so he's clearly a man of the jungle. But
he's helpful at first.
But his plan is bananas. I don't understand it. And I'm curious if it made any sense to you. You know, he's
no. Okay. No, nothing about his character made sense to me.
Okay, good.
Which is why I could not stop watching it. It is unbelievable.
Yeah. It's a riot. I mean, you know, he talks a lot. He's constantly talking about catching this giant snake because it's worth a lot of money if they can catch it. And he's not interested in the baby snakes because they're apparently not worth money. But
not worth his time.
But why not catch all the baby snakes and maybe one of them turns out to be big?
Yeah, I don't know.
Just grab a couple dozen.
He wants a specific snake.
He does, and I guess he's got, you know, they allude at different points to the fact that he's got some history with this particular snake.
Yeah.
But you come to realize that he has set up the crew to be killed by the snake, and you know he's luring the snake with the crew. Not a helpful character at all. So yeah, you know the surviving members of the documentary crew are definitely pit against the snake and Jon Voight over the second half of the movie, and you know I think a tenet of any good man versus animal movie is you see people picked off or you see people die in creative ways.
Yeah.
And that's certainly true here. Snake definitely picks apart this cast. But there's some deaths that are more notable than others. And Jon Voight's is one of them. You know, he's killed by the Anaconda near the end of the movie. But then he's regurgitated.
Yeah. Which they did set up.
They did.
They did tell you that was going to happen.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah.
this is just like one of the things the snake does, right? It half kills you. Is that the idea? And then it just wants to eat you again?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. And that indeed happens. And Jon Voight, as he's regurgitated, winks.
Yeah.
You remember that?
I think I blocked it out.
Like he gets spit back up and then he like smiles and winks.
Like, this is what I always wanted.
So why did I choose this movie? Like I said, it's not good. And it hasn't aged as well as I thought that it would. I want to say I saw this in the early 2000s and just had a lot of fun with it. So I was eager to come back.
It's a fun movie.
It is.
But the snakes don't look good.
No.
They're not that scary. They're not that interesting.
There are some robotic snakes in this. There's some real snakes in this as well. But, you know, at the end of the day, I don't think you can watch movies against this theme without an entry that goes somewhat balls to the wall. And Anaconda does that. So
yeah.
So I had to put it up. This movie did not do well critically.
It doesn't surprise me.
It was actually totaled. It was nominated for a total of 6 Razzie Awards, including Worst Picture. But interestingly, our boy Roger Ebert found something to love.
Nice.
He gave it 3.5 out of 4 stars.
That's probably too many.
He said this is a slick, scary, funny creature feature, beautifully photographed and splendidly acted in high adventure style.
That is an interesting take.
Yeah, right?
Wow.
Yeah. So Roger enjoyed it. And I think that if you haven't seen it, it's worth picking up and giving it a shot. It's a, you know, time capsule, so to speak, trip back to 1997.
You know, speaking of fairy tales, I'm going to choose for my next movie Action Jackson.
The one and only Action Jackson.
Let me read the back of the box to you. Vengeance drives a tough Detroit cop to stay on the trail of a power-hungry auto magnate who's systematically eliminating his competition.
It's a little bit of a Predator reunion.
A little
Bill
bit.
Duke and Carl Weathers.
We're going to get into that in a second here.
Sorry to steal your thunder. Go ahead.
The producer of this movie is Joel Silver, producer extraordinaire.
Yeah.
From Hollywood. A little bit of interesting trivia about Joel Silver. I don't know if you know this. He invented ultimate frisbee in high school with his friends.
Perhaps a greater triumph than Action Jackson.
Disagree.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
The entire concept of this movie started, and some would say even ended, with the name of the character and the title of the movie, Action Jackson.
Right.
Carl Weathers explained how this movie came together one day. He was on the set of Predator, and he was talking to Joel Silver, who was talking about some blaxploitation movies he loved, and Joel said something along the lines of, why don't you put something together? And so And so Carl Weathers came up with this. This is his quote. I created this story and came up with this guy, or at least this title, Action Jackson. And Joel found a writer who wrote the screenplay, and that was it. We got it made. So the title came first, which also happened to be the character. And then they made this movie entirely based on that surface level of the character. Now, I'm not usually a fan of the so bad it's good label.
Yes.
Because if I like something, I like it, and I can defend it.
Yeah.
There's nothing guilty about liking something. But I will say, when it comes to Action Jackson, it takes a certain kind of incompetence to make art that's this pure. It's kind of like Rad in the sense that it falls into this category of what I call off-the-mark art, where like the intent of the creator or the execution of their vision somewhere failed, but also somehow the final product is right for all the wrong reasons. And Action Jackson, it starts off pretty wobbly, I'll say, for the first 10 or 15 minutes. This is like when the filmmakers are trying to like build up the character of Action Jackson, and they're trying to like give you a plot, which I think demonstrates the limitations of what happens when you write a movie on a coffee break with Carl Weathers on Predator. But once we get Action Jackson on the streets, it really picks up. The movie opens up, and from then on, it's just pure 80s excess. This movie is filled with hunky dudes, hot chicks. Action Jackson runs down and tackles a moving car. There's tons of explosions. People get set on fire. It's got the loudest ninjas in history. Argyle from Die Hard is in this movie. Craig T. Nelson as a corporate executive that also does kung fu. In Action Jackson, he drives a bright red sports car through a mansion in order to get to the final confrontation. So for me.
Go on.
This is a thunderously silly movie.
It is.
That
well put.
That nonetheless is entertaining. It's built around a character that's basically just Carl Weathers.
Yes.
Which I'm okay with. He's got a fun name to say. He does a bunch of cool 80s action movie shit. And so Action Jackson might be trash, but it's platinum trash. And I'm putting it on the staff recommendation shelf for title protagonists.
Boy, I have such a weird relationship with this movie. You encouraged me to watch it, and yes. I did. And, I mean, you come out of this and you're like, I know I should fucking hate this movie. And and yet, I think I do. I think I fucking hate this movie. But at the same time, it's a good time watching it.
It's a good time. There's parts of it that are bad, I guess.
Yeah, doesn't he drive a Ferrari down a set of stairs and like snakes it around
into a mansion? Yeah, I'm not sure if it's not. It's actually not a Ferrari. It's one of this guy's cars.
Okay,
because he has a car company.
That's
but
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically like
something
a Ferrari,
like a Ferrari
style. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's cheesy. It's goofy, but it's kind of awesome.
You can't watch this through a critical lens. You have to just be like, because I think you said off the mark art in that category of film.
Yes.
It's
yeah. We could talk all day about the shortcomings of Rad, right?
Oh, 100%.
But that's also why we love the movie.
Yes.
And I know that you don't feel the same way about Action Jackson, but I'm telling you, for me, it's the same kind of love.
I gotcha.
And maybe if you keep revisiting this movie, you'll go to love it like I do.
It's funny to me looking back on some of the some of the actors in this movie, because it's an impressive cast looking back. Craig T. Nelson was popular at this time. He was Coach. Carl Weathers had been in Predator. Sharon Stone about to star in Total Recall.
Become a huge star.
Yeah, Total Recall is a year later, and it's such a weird moment in time that they all started in this movie when they did. And,
and like I said, it's kind of a nothing character.
Yeah,
but it's still surprising that there wasn't a sequel. This movie was not a critical success. It has a 13 on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay.
Audience score is 32. Yeah. But it made $65 million on a budget of $7 in 1988. So why aren't there 4 of these movies?
It feels like it's begging to be a franchise.
Yeah.
And which is funny because they pack so much. They pack a franchise worth of action into Action Jackson, and I don't know. It feels like a lot of the scenes in this
felt
movie,
like they told the story they needed to tell.
We've covered everything.
I mean, this should have at least been some sort of direct-to-video series. Who knows? Maybe Carl Weathers had something else going on that we don't know about.
It's funny because we already talked about how Sharon Stone went on to be in Total Recall, but she was coming out of what became a straight-to-video series before she started in it. She was in Police Academy 4.
Oh, wow.
Right before Action Jackson. And I guess it's a strange pivot. But no, I respect the choice. It's not my favorite movie, but when you compare it to Rad in the way that you did.
A lot of our customers are coming in here for a different kind of movie night.
Right.
Sometimes people want to have a cup of chamomile tea and watch a French movie. Sometimes you want to get a 6-pack of beer and order a triple meat pizza and watch Action Jackson with your bros. And that might be a good thing to do.
Here's a conversation that I could picture happening at the checkout counter at Rewind Video. I could see a customer coming in and saying, "Hey, you guys chose title protagonists for this week's theme. I don't see John Wick anywhere on the shelf. Is it rented or did you just not choose it?" And the response would be, "Well, if you like John Wick, you should really consider Action Jackson."
Yeah, we're trying to throw some people some new ideas here, and maybe all the John Wick fans haven't tried Action Jackson yet, and maybe they should.
Well, we've talked often when it comes to the movies that get picked for the shelf that we don't want to throw something up that people don't need another excuse to see again.
Yes.
And there are a lot of movies, especially in the title protagonist category, that people are quite familiar with. Action Jackson, I'd be surprised if a lot of our customers had seen. So
this doesn't get a lot of action. Let's put it that way.
No.
So, yeah, give this disc some action.
I'm going to go in a different direction with my next film, and we're gonna switch instruments up as well. So I am going to go with 1995's Desperado.
Sweet.
Back of the box synopsis: former musician and gunslinger El Mariachi arrives at a small Mexican border town after being away for a long time. His past quickly catches up with him, and he soon gets entangled with the local drug kingpin Bucho and his gang. The tagline here is, when the smoke clears, it just means he's reloading.
That's fucking awesome.
So this is my choice for a movie where a musical instrument is not what you expect it to be. Desperado comes to us by way of Robert Rodriguez. This is his second feature film and a sequel of sorts.
It's kind of like an Evil Dead thing where it's like
Yes.
part sequel, part remake.
Yeah. It's got some quote marks around sequel, but it's a sequel-ish to El Mariachi, which he made just a couple years earlier. Rodriguez is the type of director, I think, similar to Kevin Smith, who probably inspired a lot of kids in the 90s to enroll in film school.
El Mariachi was legendary in the 90s.
Yes.
I mean, it cost like $7,000 or something.
Yes.
Something like that.
Yes. I mean, it was made on nothing.
Peanuts.
Yeah. And this movie didn't even have a big budget, but a lot bigger than El Mariachi. But back to Rodriguez. He's got a distinctive style, a little bit punk, a little DIY, which is supported by how they pulled off some of the stunts for this movie. Watching films like this when you're an adolescent leaves you thinking, fuck, I want to make movies. If this guy can do it, I can do it. And it's inspiring. So this movie follows Antonio Banderas, who plays the mariachi here. His character is kind of bouncing from town to town under the guise that he's a guitar player looking for work. But what he's really doing is hunting for a gangster who...
Former guitar player.
Well, he's still got it, but he's not doing it professionally anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a gangster who he's after who killed the woman that he loved. So we learn pretty early when he walks into a bar that the guitar case that he's carrying is actually just full of guns, ammo, and grenades.
Yes.
But that's not to say that his character doesn't have the ability to play an instrument. There's a great opening sequence where he performs a song as a mariachi, and
although that is a dream sequence, so we don't know that he's actually good. Maybe he's just dreaming that he's good.
We don't know that he's actually good. The actor is good because yes. Antonio Banderas actually played the guitar in any scene that he was shown playing a guitar.
I have a thought. I have a take on Antonio Banderas.
I can't wait to hear it.
Now he's obviously,
yeah,
he's an extremely handsome and sexy man, right? Like we can agree on that.
Very handsome, very sexy,
very handsome, like extremely good-looking dude. But like he's 35 when this movie came out. If you had told me he was 60, I think I'd believe you.
I agree.
Like he's not wrinkly, he's not craggy. He's not weathered. Like his face, he just has one of those faces. Like this looks like he could be in this movie came out in 1995.
Yes.
Like he could have if you would have told me he's 60 years old, I'm like he looks pretty good for 60, but I believe you. Like he just has one of those faces. Like he looks so old.
He does, which is funny because he plays opposite. Oh my God, Salma Hayek in this, and Salma was very young when this movie was filmed, but she has gone on to be ageless. I mean, she looks as good today as she did.
Antonio Banderas still looks great today.
Yes.
But he still looks 60.
Yes.
But like I'm saying, when he was 35, he looked 60 years old.
I don't disagree 60. With you. Yeah, a good yes. Yeah. Yes. So Banderas does play the guitar. If not in a dream sequence, there is even a scene where he's teaching a young boy to play guitar, and you can tell, okay, it's not a fake thing. It's not pretending to be a mariachi. He's clearly got the skill, but that skill does not really it isn't really part of what we see on screen when we're following his character through the movie.
It's not what the movie's about,
right? So why did I choose this? It's probably clear that the musical instrument does not actually play a significant role in this movie in the traditional sense. But the perception of Banderas as a guitar player is pretty persistent, and I think it's effective in making him trustworthy. It gets him in the door as he's bouncing around looking for the gangster he's after. Nobody's going to trust a mercenary with a chip on his shoulder, but a traveling mariachi, that's a different story. So
and it plays a big part of his history as well.
Yes,
and even after it's no longer good as a cover. It kind of defines him to people who are looking for him to kill him.
Yes.
It's like, get the guy with the guitar.
Yes.
Even though they don't know what he looks like.
Exactly. So separate from how this movie fits tonight's theme, it's just big, violent, dumb fun. There's a Tarantino cameo here that's fucking fantastic. Yeah. Steve Buscemi plays a bit part. His character is even named Buscemi because it was written with him in mind.
Yeah. I'm going to start doing that.
On Letterboxd, this sits at a 3.4. There's an excerpt from a review by the user Todd that really resonated with me. It says, there's a quality to Robert Rodriguez action films that I can only describe as trashy sophistication, and it's a quality that I really appreciate. The vibe is great. The fun is real.
That sums it up really well, I think.
It does.
Like, this is like one of those movies that it's like, it's not the best movie ever, but it's really good. It's really fun, and man, it would have been so fun to make this movie.
Oh, I have to believe it was. Although there's some interesting anecdotes if you dig around about some real injuries that occurred. So there's one stuntman that Antonio Banderas kills like 12 different times in this movie. It's like sometimes he has a mustache, sometimes he has a beard, sometimes he's clean shaven. It's just the same guy. There's a scene where Banderas and Salma Hayek jump from building to building, and typically there would be like an elaborate crane system.
Yeah.
I think they just rented a crane operator like from a construction site and put a wire on it, and like Banderas hits his head off the building.
Oh my
like
God.
It's kind of a miracle that there weren't more injuries.
But I mean, that's kind of his DIY spirit, which,
Yes.
comes with its own risks,
It does.
I suppose.
It does. So, if you're looking for an action flick by a director who is just kind of lifting off of the launch pad in his career, and you want a musical instrument without watching a movie about music, and you want to see Antonio Banderas in a silly, jangly mariachi costume for 104 minutes, then Desperado is parked right here on the staff recommendation shelf.
It's really
for you to
great.
pick up and rent.
It's really great. If you are anyway interested in 90s independent cinema, you have to see this movie.
Yeah, and for that matter, get El Mariachi while you're at it.
Yeah.
There's a third movie in the quote-unquote trilogy featuring these characters, and it's Once Upon a Time in Mexico, which I haven't seen.
I think I have. I don't think it's as good as Desperado. I think Desperado is definitely the highlight of the trilogy.
Right.
But it's been a while since I've seen either of the other two, so I'll have to revisit those as well.
Yeah. So that's my pick for the second movie in my list.
It's a good one.
I appreciate it.
I'm gonna start in the 90s, 1990. The movie is Class of 1999.
Oh boy, I was a graduate of the class of 1999.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was especially looking forward to
Yeah,
this.
that's last century.
It is.
It's appropriately 99 minutes. It's directed by Mark L. Lester. He directed the 1984 version of Firestarter. He directed Commando.
He directed Commando?
He directed Commando. And a 1979 movie that I've never seen but immediately went on my watch list. It's called Roller Boogie. This is ostensibly a follow-up to 1982's Class of 1984.
Directed by the same guy?
Directed by the same guy, but it's not really a direct sequel. I don't believe that one has any sci-fi or robot elements. I think it's just about like a rough high school. Here's the back of the box to Class of 99. 3 ex-military robots are reprogrammed as teachers and secretly placed in a school where most students are part of organized gangs. They begin to respond violently to unruly students, and their military training starts to take over. Tagline: the ultimate teaching machine, out of control.
Wow.
This movie is operating under a ridiculous premise.
Yeah.
The schools in this world are at the center of the crime world, essentially in cartel zones that surround these schools. This was at a time when schools are becoming a little bit more violent. But for some reason, the people in this world don't see a need to move the schools from where they are. They're going to keep them right there.
Right, like smack dab in the middle.
Yeah, and parents are apparently sending their kids into these zones to go to a shitty school where they might get hurt, and they're definitely not going to get educated.
Right.
Here's some stats for you that are in the movie. At this school, there are 3,287 students. 2,210 of which are gang members. That's 67% of the population.
Okay.
Violent incidents in the school happen every 2 hours and 38 seconds, which based on what we see in the text of this movie seems like they're being underreported because it seems like they're happening every 5 to 10 minutes.
Yeah. Well, again, as a graduate of this class, I can say that this feels a lot like a documentary.
Yes, the late 90s were really rough at some of these schools. A lot of scenes have random gunfire and explosions in the background, just as a world building exercise. I think they're like definitely comedy beats as well.
Yes, for sure.
The people in this world, though, are so hard to maintain like some sort of like illusion of a normal school experience in the middle of this hellscape. But it left me wondering, like, what must the world be like outside of these free fire zones?
Right.
Like we see a little bit of it, but not really.
Right.
We don't really know what like the average suburban experience is.
Yeah. There's maybe one scene where it feels like, oh, this is just modern day San Francisco, which isn't without its problems. But this is definitely trying very hard to be a Verhoeven level parody. Oh yeah,
it's not quite that. And actually, it rips off pretty much everything in its path: RoboCop, Repo Man, Terminator.
Oh yeah,
everything John Carpenter had done up to this point. It's a little bit more of a black comedy to me than a hard parody. It's maybe just a little bit too silly to be like a Verhoeven style movie. But I am a huge fan of trashy movies with preposterous premises.
Right.
And this movie is very extra in every way.
It's kind of balls to the wall.
Yeah, it's like a lot of B movie fare. It's not very subtle. Stacy Keach's hair and eyeballs in this movie are just like out of control. They're just wild choices.
Yes, yeah. He's wearing some crazy contact lenses.
Yes, and those can't be comfortable.
No,
like they're like, especially back then, like that, like the Michael Jackson in Thriller eyeballs. Like those are like big hunks of plastic that you had to keep in your eyes. Like not to mention the fact he's got like a dyed white mullet at the same time. There's a lot of like fairly bloody violence in this movie, which is cool. There's a robot decapitation, which they managed to make kind of gory.
Oh, quite.
Bradley Gregg, he's the lead in this movie. He's playing this part like completely straight.
He is, and that's impressive for essentially an off-brand Corey Feldman.
Yeah. And everybody else in this movie is like pure caricature.
Yeah.
But he's playing it straight. But I actually think that's what this movie needs from him, and I think he does a good job at it. It really it's good for the part. But what really pushes this movie over the top for me is that there are so many great explosions.
There are no shortage of explosions.
Especially in the second half, including one where they blow up the school. It's not as good as like Rock and Roll High School, but it's in the same vein. And then, of course, we get to the robo teachers, who I submit are not suited to be teachers.
No, not at all.
They immediately get violent with these students.
Yeah.
Like,
in some interesting ways.
Yes, and like at the drop of a hat.
Right.
Pam Grier is one of these robo teachers, and her first interaction with students includes her beating the shit out of 3 or 4 students.
Right.
And all the scientists in the back that are watching this, researchers, whatever they are, regional managers for the military industrial complex, they're all watching this on monitors, and they start breaking out into applause when the teacher beats the shit out of a handful of students, and they're like, this is perfect.
Yeah, she is operating as planned.
This is great. They have the option to not react violently. The option is there from the viewpoint of the robots. Educate is an option, and discipline is an option. Educate is never chosen, not once.
No.
They never take that option. So we don't know that educate doesn't also include violence. It might.
Right.
But of course, the robo teachers very quickly move on to murdering students in the school, supposedly in self-defense. They kill multiple students on, I believe, the second day that they're there. Mm-hmm. Stacy Keach is thrilled at that,
and not even in a really discreet way. Like it's in the halls or like in a gym, and it's just like that's what happened to this kid who misbehaved.
Yes, and the one kid had a gun, and even though it was pretty obvious that he didn't have to be murdered by his teacher, he did come at his teacher with a gun. So like, okay, that happens. The
The
other
threat
kid
was
was
real.
like, the threat was manufactured.
Yeah, he was just high.
He was just high, and the teacher was shoving drugs down this kid's throat. So like, I don't know. They're just looking to kill kids for any reason.
Yeah.
Then they just go into like full on commando mode, and they're like traveling the streets at night, like trying to start shit, looking for excuses to kill students.
Yeah.
It's kind of unclear what the role is besides just like pick out a group of students that needs to go and just murder them, I guess.
Yeah, it had me wondering what did the company who created these robots hope to achieve? Because it seems like they knew all along this is what these robots are going to do. And the plan, at least as I understood it, was let's do a pilot program in this one school. It's going to go off without a hitch, and then we're going to put these military robots in all the schools. But with all this murder.
Yeah, they went a little bit too far. But I think what happened is these robo teachers are really just a result of the military industrial educational complex. I think it's even in the movie. It's the Department of Defense and Education.
Yeah.
And like anything else, this technology was developed for military purposes, and they use it. They use it as much as they can. But they're like, well, we could sell way more robots if we can shove these things into schools.
Yeah.
And so they're like, cool, we'll figure out like a civilian application for this thing. And who cares if it results in some students dying? The schools are rough anyway. They probably need it.
Yeah.
So that's how these people think. Yeah, so this is just a small B movie, low budget. It was not a hit. It lost money. It's got a 3.2 on Letterboxd. It's so people like it, but it's a trashy movie. I'm not gonna lie.
But fun.
It's fun. It's exactly the kind of low budget trash that I love.
Yeah.
It's got a premise that comes from completely off the map. Evil military teacher robots, a few laughs, a little bit of something to say, even if that often gets drowned out by the explosive action scenes.
Right.
So I'm putting this on the shelf for best supporting robots.
Can I tell you my favorite part of this movie?
Please.
So it's a scene that I don't think is played for comedy, but I could not stop laughing at it. There's a point in like the second act where the two kids who are lead characters are getting to the bottom of who these teachers are, and they manage to get a hold of the addresses where these teachers live. They all live together.
Yes, yeah.
And so they go to the house and discover like the house is empty. There's no furniture. There's no clothes. But what really tips them off that these teachers are not who they seem to be is that there's a cabinet full of WD-40,
Right.
like can after can of WD-40. No rent. It's not like there are wrenches around or like some sort of crazy power source for these robots to charge themselves. It's like, no, they just need to like spray some WD-40 into the armpits at the end of the day. And
it seems like a very inefficient way to maintain your robots. So, it's just like constantly greasing it. Maybe they just use a little bit, and they just needed to fill up the cabinets with something.
Maybe, yeah. It's a lot of WD-40.
Yeah, they go through a ton.
Yeah,
a lot of lube.
Well, great choice. I had a lot of fun watching this.
Yeah, I think our customers are gonna dig watching this. Get some friends together.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. It's fun.
It's a party movie.
It's fun one to laugh at. Well, great choice, Rob. We're gonna stick with airplanes. I didn't want for all three of my choices to be devoid of air travel. So I'm going to pick up where you left off.
There's a lot of airplanes up there.
Yeah, there are. And a lot of movies about airplanes.
Yes.
The one I chose was 2005's Red Eye. And here's the back of the box if you're unfamiliar. A woman is kidnapped by a stranger on a routine flight. Threatened by the potential murder of her father, she is pulled into a plot to assist her captor in offing a politician. I happen to have the tagline for this movie, and it is "Fear Takes Flight."
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we're gonna, close this episode out with Wes Craven's best attempt at channeling Alfred Hitchcock. Craven only did 2 other feature films after this before passing away, the last of which was Scream 4 in 2011. So this comes near the end of Wes Craven's career. Obviously, he's known for horror, particularly of the supernatural variety. Nightmare on Elm Street, obviously, People Under the Stairs, Swamp Thing. Weirdly, he did a non-horror film in 1999 called Music of the Heart. about a violin teacher who struggles to teach kids in inner city Harlem.
No, didn't see that one.
Yeah, no, neither have I. I wouldn't actually call Red Eye a horror movie. It definitely falls into the thriller genre, but Craven's experience with horror definitely pays off. Red Eye stars Rachel McAdams and Cillian Murphy. Brian Cox is also here in a supporting role, but those three are the only real name actors that you get. A little more about the plot. So Rachel McAdams plays the part of a hotel manager. She's flying home to see her dad and befriends Cillian Murphy's character at the airport. He seems nice, friendly, genuine. And when then
Does he?
I mean, he's trying to sell himself as that. It
Right.
seems a little fake,
Yeah, it seems like he's
a
trying
little
to be
too good to be true.
Yeah, something.
I agree. But
Maybe it's just the way, I feel like his face was just shined up in a way that was like, I can't trust this.
yeah. Well, that's why he's great in this part. But yeah, when they finally board the flight, the two of them, Rachel McAdams and Cillian Murphy, are sitting next to each other. Once they're in the air, the proverbial mask comes off, and Murphy reveals that he's actually been kind of like scouting McAdams for weeks, needs her to move a politician who's staying at her hotel to a different room so that the politician can be assassinated. 2/3 of this movie is literally Rachel McAdams and Cillian Murphy sitting on an airplane together.
Yeah.
And it's actually great.
It's like a bottle movie.
Yeah, absolutely. That part of the movie is where things feel the most tense. And, it's also the part of the movie that I think feels the least dated. Apart from the presence of phones in the backs of seats on planes, we don't
Yeah.
really have that anymore. Why did I choose this? This isn't a B movie, but I think it's kind of a B plus movie. It doesn't quite get all the way out of B category.
Yeah, I mean, I
for
think
me.
it's like follows a B movie.
Yeah,
Like, it's like a one idea movie.
Right. Yeah. And which is fine. We've
Some of
talked.
my favorite movies.
Yeah, we've talked about our affinity for like classic 3-star movies
Yes.
on the show. I think this is exactly that. Super fun with a clear, straightforward plot. Doesn't waste a lot of time getting into the good stuff. McAdams and Murphy are terrific. Murphy in particular, I think, is great as a villain in general, and the turn his character takes is pretty scene-stealing. He's just scary and believable as a scary person.
Yeah, that's why I didn't trust him in the beginning.
Yeah.
He's very compelling as a villain.
Yeah, I agree. I also like I like stories where that take place in settings where the tools available to the protagonist to solve a problem are limited. Fall does a great job with that. I think this does too. You'd think that being on a plane with a guy who's threatening you would be easy to escape from, but with the threat of her dad being killed, if she doesn't comply with this plan, McAdams' character is pretty trapped. You really kind of feel the claustrophobia and the sense of dread that she's going through in the window seat next to Murphy. She's really good in this too. I really like Wes Craven's direction. Full disclosure, this does feel somewhat dated when we're outside of the airplane. When we're in the airport, in the hotel. It's just a little bit of that. Yeah, you can feel that this is like 16 years, almost 20 years old. But as a movie, it all still works. I think Craven knows how to build tension, keep the audience's attention, and tell a pretty entertaining story. All that's on pretty full display. He's also really good with female characters. The women in his movies are not weak or helpless. They can fend for themselves. They don't put up with shit. That was true of many of the movies throughout his career, especially Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street, but it's true of Red Eye too. Interestingly, this was written for Robin Wright and Sean Penn. But Craven wanted younger leads. Murphy actually wanted this part so bad that he apparently flew from England to Hollywood like 2 days before his wedding to like sell Wes Craven on the fact that he should be cast. So I'm glad that he did.
Going back to structure though, this is the structured as like this assassination thriller. But to me, this is actually a horror movie about air travel. I think it really nails the horror of like everything about the traveling process. the air travel process, like the check-in lines, the
Flights being delayed,
the airport bars, the fucking putting your bags up above,
claustrophobia on a plane.
I think it just like every bit of this movie, like the story is a thriller about this assassination that this guy is trying to accomplish. But like the feeling of this movie, it's like horrifying because like it gets the air travel experience way too right.
Yeah, it does. And anyone who is the least bit comfortable with flying will have a lot to relate to here. I mean, everything from being in the airport to being on the plane to taking off and landing, turbulence, all that stuff. It's all here,
It's like on some level, it's like being in a bus station for 84 minutes or however long this movie is, where it's just like you feel that feeling, while this other story is happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a horror movie to me.
Interesting. Would you? Yeah, I don't disagree with that take. Air travel has never bothered me. It's always really relaxing. So I don't relate on that level, but I could see that if you don't like traveling, God, this is terrifying on a whole different level.
I mean, I love traveling.
Yeah.
I don't mind being up in an airplane, but like dealing with
all that bullshit,
airports and the people that work at airports and the people that go to airports and are on airplanes and the whole thing is just
Yeah.
It's like watching a movie about doing your taxes. I don't mind paying taxes. I don't even mind like filling out the forms, but like I don't want to watch a movie about it. That sounds like that sounds terrifying.
Yeah. I went on to Letterboxd. By the way, this sits at a 3.2, and I was looking for some reviews that I could relate to. I was taken aback by how many reviews were solely devoted to this movie is great because Cillian Murphy is hot, and even to the point where it's like people are saying like, Cillian Murphy choking me in a bathroom? Yes, please. And I don't know. It just it rubbed me the wrong way, and it just I couldn't help but to think, wow, if the roles were reversed and this was just like page after page after page of reviews of people saying this movie is great because she is hot.
Yes,
it would feel different.
Just remember that when you're looking at aggregated reviews, like some of those include bullshit reviews.
Indeed. I did find one user by the name of Matt Lynch who said, I'm amused by how lean and efficient this is, given that the bad guy's plan is so absurdly elaborate. This kind of falls into that category of movies like The Dark Knight, where it's like, wait a minute, how many things need to come together in order for this to fucking work? And wasn't there an easier way to?
I think this one, I think it kind of worked. It didn't put me off. It felt like it seemed fairly reasonable, maybe a little bit too complicated, but
yeah,
I think it was believable.
It's a means to an end. It's all about just creating a tense 80-some minutes on an airplane, and it works in that respect. So I would say check it out. It's our 6th and final In the Air recommendation, and it's a fun one.
It sure is. That's going to do it for this episode. The movies we chose were I Know What You Did Last Summer, Anaconda, Action Jackson, Desperado, Class of 1999, and Red Eye. Go to rewindvideopod.com to get in touch with us. And a reminder, when the store reopens next week, the clock starts again on your rentals. So don't forget to return those DVDs, Blu-rays, VHSs, and Laserdiscs. Thanks, everybody. Be kind. Recommend.